Many of you have 401ks or other forms of private pensions. You invest in mutual funds or bonds or what have you. There's an enormous amount of money in the aggregate when you add up all the pension plans, private pension plans, where you've put money aside under the tax code to save for your futures. And many of you have been extremely responsible about this. But we have a government that's completely out of control. We have a government that is searching everywhere, near and far, to seize more and more of your private property. I've told you before, this isn't about millionaires and billionaires. It's about you. You in this audience, collectively. Your assets amount to more than all the millionaires and billionaires put together. The whole goal here is to control you. You. Now, this is very important because this keeps coming up. And that's why I'm leading the program with it today. If you have a 401k or 403b or your small business and you have your own little pension fund and so forth, you are in the target site. This from Investors Business Daily, John Merline. He writes, is your 401k safe from the tax man? That's a question that might be worth asking. As the Congressional Super Committee scrambles to find $1.5 trillion in additional deficit cuts. In September, the Senate Finance Committee held a little-noticed hearing that explored changes to retirement plans, principally employer-sponsored 401ks that would in one way or another cut their tax deductions. The tax break's size makes them a tempting target for lawmakers. According to the White House Budget Office, tax exemptions for 401ks and IRAs will, quote-unquote, cost the government more than $436 billion over the next 5 years. See, your money doesn't belong to you. It never has, according to the left. This is why I call them Marxists. It is key to understanding why they hate capitalism. Because the premise of capitalism in the market system is that you work, you save, you buy, you collect assets, they belong to you, and the government only can take that which it's constitutionally permitted to take. But on the left, you hear them, pay this, pay that, I want free. In other words, your labor and your property belongs to everybody. Critics say the existing system benefits mostly the rich. Here we go. Do you have a 401k, folks? You have a 403b? You have an IRA? Well, now you're rich. The liberal-leaning Tax Policy Center calculates that 80% of these tax expenditures, quote-unquote, go to the top 20% of earners. Who cares? There's a lot of people out there with these private pension plans. They're basically savings, your savings. But in order to attack the rich, they're going to attack you. Because you, in the aggregate, the masses, quote-unquote, the workers, quote-unquote, you have more money in your pension plans than the millionaires and billionaires combined. Because they, too, are limited on how much they can put aside. So we're going to get the class warfare Marxist propaganda in order to convince you to surrender your retirement money. Such people would almost certainly save for retirement even without tax incentives, says Karen Friedman, policy director at the Pension Rights Center. Look how they name themselves. But Judy Miller of the American Society of Pension Professionals and Actuaries argues that the deductions cost is widely exaggerated. Adjust for the taxes paid when retirees withdraw money, the cost is cut in half. In other words, that money's not free money. At some point you pay taxes on it. And she says the break is more progressive than some allege. Among other things, high earners who get a bigger tax break going in pay more taxes when they take the money out. But the point is the class warfare, folks, is used to disarm you. Oh, go ahead, get the rich. They're not getting the rich. They want you. Plus, the current system has led to an explosion in retirement savings, with 401ks now holding about $4.7 trillion in assets and IRAs $4.9 trillion. I want you to listen to that. For the hardcore left, that's $9.6 trillion just sitting there in private hands, and they do not like it. That's your money. You earned it. You put it aside. You followed the tax rules. You followed the law. You're saving it for your retirement. You're concerned Social Security won't be there or it won't be enough. You've been encouraged to do it. It's logical to do it. And there it sits. And your government's getting antsy. $9.6 trillion. That's a lot of money. Isn't it? Now, ladies and gentlemen, there is no end to which the left will go to separate you from your liberty and your private property. I come on this program day in and day out, and among other things, I try to explain the nature of the individual, the relationship between the citizen and the government, what the Constitution does and does not allow. And I want you to look around you. You can see the unraveling of this society. You can see the rise of the soft tyranny. You can see that politicians actually believe that because they get elected to office and they can cobble together a majority, even a temporary majority, that they have the power to infringe on your unalienable rights. This is scary stuff, and it's going on each and every day. I could open the newspaper and talk to you about some product that's being banned, some conduct that's perfectly legitimate and moral being banned. Where does this end? Answer, it doesn't end. Unless we put a stop to it. You see the stories all day long, all week long, all summer long against conservatives and Tea Party activists. You want to know why? Because we are the only ones who stand between this tyranny and liberty. That's it. If we weren't around, if we go, there's nothing left. There's no one left. These are not academic debates. These are not just professorial discussions. We have people who are conspiring, who are strategizing to take from you what belongs to you. And basically what we are doing is legalizing plunder. Legalizing plunder. I want you to keep another thing in mind. This is very, very important. You are not in the minority. You are in the majority. You are constantly targeted as some extreme, small, cult-like operation. Reagan made it clear in his great 1977 speech at CPAC. We're the majority. They're the cult. Just because Chuck Schumer jumps up and starts quoting polls doesn't mean a thing. As a matter of fact, there's a great piece on National Review Online by Andrew Stiles, and he points out that the Tea Party popularity and unpopularity numbers are basically the same as they were prior to last November's election, where there was a landslide against Schumer and his ideologues. I've never seen a poll, have you, on Schumer's popularity nationwide? I wonder how well he would do. I think very, very poorly. Don't you? So this class warfare propaganda isn't about class warfare at all. That's a fraudulent argument. It is about the government stealing the value of what you've created with your own labor. It's about the government stealing your liberty. These protests that are going on are thoroughly racist, anti-Semitic. But when it comes to the substantive issues, they're telling you everything you need to know about the left. Everything. I demand free schooling. I demand a guaranteed job. In other words, anything that they don't get, anything that's not handed to them, they demand. And, of course, we are not free to demand anything from them, that they actually work and pay their own taxes. Just what's going on in this society. We have never paid more collectively, local, state, federal taxes than we are paying today as individuals. They can talk about 90% and all the rest of it. We're paying taxes on things that didn't even exist. We're paying types of taxes that never existed before. They come up with 1,000 different ways to separate us from what we've earned. And then rather than saying thank you to us, rather than sending us a thank you note, they smear us. They attack us. 53% of the people in this country pay all the federal income taxes, carrying the weight for the other 47%. And do you know some of the 47% even get tax credits? How do you get a tax credit when you don't pay a tax? 53%. 48.5% of the people in this country are on some form of government subsidy. Now, this society can't survive if this continues, and yet we're told it's not enough. And they keep waving, go after the rich in front of your face. Let me suggest one other approach to this. What kind of country would we be if we went after millionaires and billionaires, whatever that means? Because, as you know, they've dumbed down the definitions for millionaires and billionaires. It's now any individual who earns $200,000, any couple that earns $250,000. That would include most small businesses. So that's all propaganda. But what kind of a country would we be? You know what we would be? You know what we would be? If we completely leveled economic outcomes, we would be a police state. You know why people like you and me defend the rich? Not because they need defending from us, but because we are defending our children and grandchildren. We are sophisticated and intelligent enough to understand that this isn't about the rich. This is about individual liberty, individual independence, individual sovereignty. Any government that has the power to steal the fruits of somebody's labor from them just because it can is a government that's going to steal the future of your children and grandchildren. Because it'll never be enough. It can never be enough. Look at the tyranny south of the border in Cuba, in Venezuela, in Bolivia, and places like that. Right? Class warfare, where these dictators actually execute their philosophy. How are the people doing in those countries? They're suffering. They're dirt poor. How about these other countries, Zimbabwe, other countries in Africa where class warfare is used? How are the little people doing there? They're starving to death. Society has completely unraveled. There's no rule of law except the law at the end of a gun. You're going to accept the fact that they're even considering somehow tampering with your private pension fund that consists of money that you earned, that you took out of your own paycheck, or for your small business, took out of your own coffers and put aside for when you retire doing the responsible thing? Isn't it interesting that they're focused on that, but not the parasites? That's the difference between us and them. That's the bottom line.